Thank you very much. And listen, thank you very much for everybody for coming in. As I said, we were going to do the introductions, but they've been done for us. And I think, so we've got like 46 years of experience on the stand.
Yeah.
Okay. So we know a few things, but we also don't know a few things, right? And we're very, for us, I think there's us to kind of give, some of our thought leadership and experience back to you, but equally we're hoping in the Q&A session that you guys kind of bring some of your examples and hopefully what we see today, stimulates some ideas, generates a bit of inspiration, and we can have a dialogue. That said, we've got a fantastic stand, just down at the end of the corridor. Marcin and myself are here for the next 2 days. So if you want to catch up with a coffee later, something a little bit stronger, we're more than happy to pick your brains. You're more than happy to pick our brains. I would probably say getting towards later in the evenings, the brains are probably a little bit pickled, so just choose your time for doing that. But as I said, we're more than happy to be here. I think from us, being a diamond sponsor to this event, for us is incredible. Thankfully, it's in Warsaw, which is great for us because it's where generally most of our competency centre here is based. And as I said, we're going to kind of take you through for the next sort of half an hour, 35 minutes. What we're seeing and what we've seen in the marketplace, and when I say marketplace, it's sort of really interesting to kind of, thankfully, our experience comes with a lot of sort of multinational programs. We work in really diverse teams. We're talking like project teams or program teams of like 200, 300, 400 people. Okay, so I know sometimes for us that feels a little bit sort of, blasé, and we can get a little bit facetious about what we do. But actually some of these things, we find challenges that probably a lot of people don't even know that exists. And I think for us to kind of bring some of that into this organization and into this session today, and actually sort of help people resonate with some of their challenges, I think that's really what we're trying to do. So without further ado, we're going to kind of kick on, and I think for us, just to kind of position kind of why we're here and what we're doing, I mean, the title Quality at Speed is purposefully vague. It's a classic piece of EY marketing. So thank you to the EY marketing team for that. But we're really talking about, and I think one of the things, and why I put this up, and I mean, this is me talking, right? And this is me speaking, because I think what we've seen, again, I'm going to draw back to 46 years of combined experience. I think what we've seen in the last sort of 4 or 5 years, for us has been, for me, phenomenal. Okay, I mean, I started back in the days of Windrunner and all sorts of crazy clunky tools that you guys have probably heard these mythical beasts of. Google it if you've never heard of Windrunner, okay? Because I promise you, it was a fantastic tool in its time. But what we've really seen, and really kind of the pandemic was one of the kind of the major catalysts for this, is it wasn't necessarily the technology that was being released out into the marketplace that was making or breaking things. It was actually the speed of getting it out there, okay? Now, you kind of think, well, yeah, that kind of makes sense, but what we've really seen and what we've seen, and we're still continuing to see, because I mean, obviously, the pandemic has kind of been and gone, right? We're in now a universe that has kind of almost forgotten about pandemic. It's forgotten about remote working and digital services, digital products, digital anything is just now what I would call the normal, right? But behind that, and you may or may not have seen that, organizations who had to get product, whatever that product is, whether that's software, widgets, it doesn't really matter. We found a lot of organizations really struggling with getting things out to the marketplace very, very quickly. Now, Agile, DevOps, and all of that, that's been around for 20-something, something 15, 20 years. That's, again, nothing new. However, I think what we've really seen, or what we've seen put a spotlight on in the last sort of few years, is actually organizations getting that right. People getting it right, the processes getting it right, the culture getting it right, and then underpinning all of that is having the kind of the right technology stack and tools, and we're going to talk a little bit, automation, to be able to, as we called, deliver quality at speed. And I think that is, for us, is one of the major sort of drivers behind this. And what we want to do is kind of take you through a bit of some case studies. We're not going to talk about the clients by name. We have to protect the innocent a little bit. But what you will hear and see, and Marcin will talk about it, they are real examples that we've worked with, generally large multinational organizations, and we'll help set that scene in a few minutes. But I think what I wanted to do is kind of just really sort of position this. And we've seen, these modern delivery models, accelerated agile, all of the, sort of, again, all sorts of ways of working, methodology. Everything is very much technology driven. Yes, it needs people. Yes, it needs processes. Yes, it needs culture. Absolutely. But I think what we actually have seen is not getting the technology right underneath it across all of the different disciplines in any kind of modern delivery model, right from requirements, development, implement, test, build, and out the door. Failure to do that has actually resulted in an inability to release what we call it quality at speed. Now, we talk about it in the concept of speed, and we kind of use the kind of the racing analogy because it has been, and I think you probably saw, back at the offset of COVID and kind of in the summer of 2020 and beyond, the banks were closed, buildings were closed, offices were closed. The only way that you could actually buy and consume things was through your laptop or through your device. So organizations had to very, very quickly, get things and product out to the market to seize the opportunity, because again, we saw many organizations, big organizations, really struggle. There's countless organizations that generally failed. I mean, it was almost like, for those who remember, and I'm showing my age a little bit, a bit like the dot-com bubble, right? Back in the late 90s when, the dot-com bubble burst, and if you don't know what the dot-com bubble burst, look it up, because, for us that's, something it's very, very synonymous with what we saw back at the height of early 2020 and 2021. And we saw a real big push on, this acceleration of time to market. Now, that, I think, over a couple of years, that got itself, together, and organizations started to be able to accelerate. And then all of a sudden, I think it was probably February of this year, there was something that was launched or put more out to the mass market, and Google fantastically launched their ChatGPT version out to the market, because it was a race against time. Microsoft were trying to do it. They were all trying to do it. And I think I can remember it. I think I wrote something and I posted it online. There was a spectacular fail. I think if you remember, Google did a huge rushed job of being able to get something out to the marketplace, and there was a live demonstration, and somebody asked the generative AI a question, and I think it got it wrong. And all of a sudden, we looked at this and said, well, you purposely just speed to market and time to market was the most critical thing beyond anything else, compromising on scope, quality. It was about getting out some time to market. And that, for me, was a real kind of, it resonated, and it kind of brought things back, that organizations still continue, even the biggest organizations, like Alphabet, they are still releasing product to the market, with generally sacrificing quality over speed. So what we're trying to do, and what we've seen is being able, how can we, as a kind of a quality engineering function, and we stopped using the word testing a few years back, and I know it's a little bit cliche, but how are we as engineers of a craft that ultimately is to improve quality? How are we, and how can we react as engineers, as leaders, as functions, to be able to actually make things happen and move things forward? Because again, users are king. I think again we see the thing. The world is a populist, nation, world. If somebody doesn't like something, all of a sudden everybody turns to the opposite direction to go somewhere else. The moment something bad happens, people just turn away. I mean, again, social media platforms, is a classic example. The moment somebody says they don't like something and they have a couple of million followers, the whole, people just follow people just turn around in another direction like sheep. But that's the challenge that organizations are having, because they can't control that. So they have to, continually be releasing product, whether that be, as I said, in software, in widgets, devices, it doesn't really matter. With that very much in mind, and that is really, for me and what we've seen, really fueling, I think a lot of hard decisions that are being made at, do we release this thing now? And I think we've all been in situations where, like, guys, this is not ready to release. I've got a report dashboard here with defects as long as my arm. This thing's not ready to go. But somebody somewhere is making a decision to sacrifice that over actually the quality of the product. And whether it's a calculated decision or a gut feel, because we'll just go with the market take and we'll just fix it forward and deal with lots of people make lots of strange decisions. But notwithstanding that, I think for us, it's something that we really need to kind of factor in on and bring. And then the other thing is kind of around balancing the kind of the piece around value and risk. Because again, time to market, speed to release is all very much attuned to the digital world. But again, we get involved in lots of regulatory product. So again, regulatory rules like IFRS 17, a whole range of FATCA and all these sort of industry, financial services industry rules and regulations. If you go into sort of pharmaceuticals, you've got a whole bunch of other sort of rules and regulatory. They are also still organizations needing to release and get product and capability out, even in a a heavy regulatory driven environment. That is also an incredibly huge challenge to overcome. So it's really for us about being able to balance the value, but also balancing the risk off the back of that. And hopefully what we can see in I'm going to flip it over to Marcin in a couple of minutes here, is kind of how we have seen and how we've helped organizations again, kind of, dare I say, open their eyes a little bit to the endless, and this is the danger, the potential endless possibilities of the kind of what we call now modern test automation. Because back in the day when I was starting out at year 2000, at 1998, there was only one tool on the market. Like literally, that was Windrunner. That was the only tool that was on the marketplace. Right? Even SAP, nothing. There was nothing around. It was just Windrunner. And we've seen tools evolve. We've seen, open source evolve. We've seen the big tool vendors evolve. And I think again there was a massive, crunch point. Again, probably about 4 years ago. I mean, again, open source was starting to gain traction. People were starting, not to doubt it so much. There was confidence in it. There was community around it, and I think that was one of the most important things. All of a sudden, you've got communities using it, using it, developing it, supporting it, and also working and extending it. We saw a lot of then consolidation in these, in the vendor market. Windrunner turned into HP, or Mercury. Mercury turned into HP. HP turned into Micro Focus. There was a lot of consolidation out in the marketplace. There was also then some advent of new tools coming up, things like Tosca, Eggplant, and some of these other things. I know. And then all of a sudden, kind of, you got things like Microsoft started to wheel out their stuff. SAP also at the same time were using their proprietary stuff. So all of a sudden the vendors, the kind of those classic vendors and tech players, were all starting to I think honestly get quite a bit scared. Because all of a sudden there was a whole rich tapestry and almost endless possibility for tools. Now, that sounds fantastic, right? You can have, there's 1,000 different tools for 1,000 different jobs. However, that now becomes quite a complicated mesh of, well, what do we use then? Should we use this? Everybody's got an opinion, everybody's got a different use case for something, and all of a sudden it gets quite complicated. So we started to look at this, and our organizations and clients started to ask us, more and more, what do we do? What is the strategy? And I think for me, that word is absolutely critical. This is the strategy. Getting it right. alongside the organizations and time, you get the theorists and the industry people talking about automation pyramids and all of that good stuff, and absolutely, completely agree with a lot of that stuff. Dare I say, it's probably a little bit, if you're still thinking of a pyramid, I would probably start to think more of a rectangle, because I think for us it's more about automation stacks than pyramids. I think pyramid has connotations of, limiting yourself in certain areas, but that might not necessarily be good for you. So the danger of taking a book by its cover is actually going against and actually having a underperforming and ill-performing strategy. So I think that's something to really think about. And then I think, again, in terms of kind of transformations and digitalization, everything became, integration became huge. Microservices, all of that stuff started to, all of a sudden, big tool vendors, big software applications, even things like SAP, BlackRock, Aladdin, anything else, all of a sudden they became open architecture. All of a sudden, after years of sticking a record and playback tool against it, all of a sudden they were opening their architectures. And again, the possibilities became endless. So where do you start? How do you get going with those things? And I think for me, one of those things is making sure that you get, kind of a strategy that is end-to-end. And really sort of think about how we're doing this and actually baking in, as I said, a very, well thought through test automation strategy. So I'm going to turn over to Marcin, because Marcin's going to start talking about sort of examples of what does that complicated delivery model look like that in turn has the complicated nature of, technology choices, and ultimately off the back of that, the automation choices that are potentially available to you, and talk you through that. So Marcin, over to you.
Thanks, Matt. Okay, so let's consider a relatively complex delivery model where we have agile teams working in Scrum, multiple teams. And they want to deliver some value to the customer, whatever it means, yeah? What's important right now is that, they may work in different technologies. They may have, in some situations also, they may have different cadence of delivery because nothing is perfect. And on top of that, at some point, we may start pre-SIT testing, which is, aims to start the integration testing early. And then we have plenty of other phases which aim to deliver the product, yeah? Some program, big one, and it can take, right now I'm on the one that will last 2 years. And our go live will be 2 years after first code was written. And then we switch to the business as usual, so we'll have, let's say, relatively stable, let's call it this way, situation. We'll have smaller releases of various components of the solution, sorry, and everything seems to be lovely. But now, the question is it practical to deliver single test automation solution in this program? There are various arguments why this could be done. The main one is that, for instance, reporting will be unified. But if we go deeper into this, and we'll start talking about this within the program team, considering all the stakeholders, all the technologies, all the obstacles that each team may have, the technology may have, we may end up in a situation, in a conclusion, that in a short term, where this short term is 2 years of implementation, it won't be so easy. Why? Because firstly, we won't be able to have agreed a proof of concept even for this, due to, again, too many stakeholders, too many technologies, too much discussions, too much arguing. Obviously, taking into account the complexity of the program, because I just would like to emphasize, we are not talking about some web application, but a complex implementation that changes, also covers the migration of data, which is this is another story and another battle. Anyway, when it comes to So there will be some features that will be required to be paid extra. And obviously, we will have issues in the supporting various technologies. We may ask ourselves a question. You know, in a short term, it's not possible. So what will happen? What are the implications from the long-term perspective? So when we switch to business as usual. So again, we've considered various let's say, attributes of the blueprint, so the impact of the automation tool which gets implemented, because we need to be conscious about this, that, you know, from, let's say, delivery perspective, it's not just about delivering the product that does something for the business. This is one side, yeah? From the other side, we deliver the tools, the delivery tools, testing tools that will support the business going forward. And this is also, it has an impact onto the organization. And now we are considering large organization, large implementation, and big problems, yeah? So the problems may be around these aspects, which we unfortunately do not see here, but there are black circles around these white topics. We have focused on the on the three of them. Matt will cover two. I will talk, sum up with the technology-related ones. Matt, over to you.
Yeah, no, thank you. So, kind of back to the previous image, and I think just kind of real sort of level set it. We've seen organisations, and kind of where we're really trying to come from. We've seen organisations trying to adopt, almost like a one-tool strategy for actually traversing the different sort of elements of the life cycle. As I said, Marcin's on this program at the moment, and as I said, from day one of the first piece of code to be cut to actually launched, we're talking 2 years. I mean, that's a long time. This organisation and other organisations have been trying to, before we even came in, trying to find a single tool set that's actually trying to deliver that end-to-end automation across a variety of different technologies, a variety of different sort of integrations and services, and really struggling. Now, it's not an isolated incident, because we've seen, and I don't know whether this is just because it's the UK market, and I can probably say that, being from the UK, it's been very, very consistent that organisations, particularly in the UK for some reason, have been trying to, what I would call, bash a round peg into a square hole, that they have bought a tool and they are, commercially wedded to a tool or a vendor that offers a kind of a closed suite of tools, and are then trying, their automation strategy is nothing more than trying to bash the round peg into the square hole to make it fit. It's not a case of, well, actually, if we change the shape of the hole and we change the shape of the peg and put the round peg into the round hole, then all of a sudden we've got a solution. But organisations, big organisations, struggle to think like that. Now, you're going to ask me why, and there is a variety of reasons why, and we probably could do a half-day workshop on the reasons why. But I think for me, trying to find and kind of resonate and bring back some of the impacts that actually, I would say, there's some hidden impacts to this. And I think, for me, I know Marcin will probably cover off on the tech stuff in a bit, but I'm very much about the people side of this. We saw, again, I'm not going to name the names, but again, multinational organisations that in the UK sell a lot of products in the financial services space. Again, choosing, continuing with a particular tool, and again, I'm not going to single out any particular commercial tool, but the people didn't want to be involved in that. They all of a sudden, because of the ongoing kind of explosion that was going around them with community-based and open source tools, these guys and girls wanted to learn more. They were seeing their friends in communities or, job adverts, and I'm kind of going to head on to this in a little bit. They were seeing organisations moving forward with their technology approach. The organization's technology strategy was moving, but actually the QA and test functions strategy was not moving alongside it. So again, they were, the leadership there were continually happy with trying to bash this round peg into a square hole, and unfortunately this round peg was just getting bigger and bigger, and the square hole was getting smaller and smaller, right? To a point where people were just saying, well, hey guys, if we're not a forward-thinking organization, I'm going to leave. I want to do something. I want to learn new skills. I want to be involved in, all of these different types of tools. I want to, this is where I want my career to go. But this organization was, well, it's our way or the highway. And they ended up losing a lot of people, a lot of folks out of their, test engineering capability. And we're talking of again, an IT shop of about 500 people, the QA and test community probably about 150. People, that's quite a big chunk of people to start getting unhappy with the direction of travel of the QA and test function. Now, people left, but also the strategy stayed. And the challenge that they had, I've talked about, attrition, staff retention, but then it ended up costing, because all of a sudden, they still needed to deliver product. They still needed to deliver stuff, and the QA and test function still needed to have people or engineers working within it. They then had to go to the market and go and find engineers, contractors generally, who were taking quite a substantial day rate to come in and actually, keep bashing the round peg into the square hole. Now, I've been a contractor, so, and I'm sure there's many contractors here in the audience, right? You're quite happy just to take a day rate, and if somebody wants you to bash a round peg into a square hole, you'll do it as long as I'm getting paid to do it, right? I mean, that's human nature, right? But the organization, all of a sudden, they had a huge cost problem, right? Budgeting problem, because their technology, their approach to QA and test and their technology stack and the marrying of that with their automation stack was completely incompatible. And it was hurting. It was costing money. And ultimately, the quality was deteriorating, and speed was just reducing and reducing and reducing. So, they had to do a hard stop on it. Now, the other thing around all of that is, again, intrinsically the budget, because, tool vendors are, they're not offering discounts. They're not, you're not going to get anything for free. That cost is continually going up as well. The more and more, the more and more you need, the more and more licenses. Nothing's free, nothing's cheap. All right, and even if you're still paying a couple of $1,000, dollars a license for a seat, or whatever it is, a pool of perpetual licenses, that is coming at a cost, right, and a big cost. And on the back of that, and again, we're kind of drawing the connectivity with the technology changes, a lot of automation work, all the frameworks, all the platforms, it's all cloud-based, right? There's very few now that we see instances of test automation frameworks and a whole test automation stack sitting on what is classified as people's machines, right? It's sitting on somebody else's machines that somebody's paying for, right? Whether that's AWS, Azure, it doesn't really matter. But there's still cost coming out of all of that. And I think that's where we're seeing a huge undercurrent, and finally, organizations that suddenly the financial controllers are coming back and saying, like, guys, why is testing costing too much? It's not necessarily the people and it's, the salaries, but there's tools and choices being made that are actually the hidden costs you don't think about in the strategy, right? Necessarily. You have we'll choose this particular tool, but are you thinking, are people and our organizations thinking about the kind of the talent side of that, the potential attrition and building team and building a career in a particular organization? And then on the flip side of that is the cost around the cost around actually standing this up, running the license costs, running all of the resources around it to make these things work. Marcin, do you want to talk about the tech side of things?
As you can see, everything depends on the technology we choose due to these factors that need to be considered. I remember the situation when in one of the huge, let's say, financial institutions, we were doing the software for plenty of banks. We just were thinking, oh, let's do something, and we've used robot framework to install the software, test the installation, test everything around the functionality, test the integration, test the, everything. What data were obviously tested as well, yeah? The funniest thing was that when somebody left, it was, let's say, there were very, very long discussions to keep the people in. I don't know how has it ended up at the end, because I'm not there anymore. But this kind of mistake cost a lot the organization. So just whenever you pick something, we can go to the next slide. Matt, I think you have a, yeah.
So what is the solution then, Marcin? After all of this, bad news and all of these challenges, you guys are not just going to leave us hanging here with, actually, guys, there's no solution at all. So what should we do and what should we be thinking about?
Yeah, so what we propose is something what we call test automation stack or portfolio-based test automation. So we should not be locked on the individual tool, but various tools that are, dedicated to do something, to cover some areas. If it's end-to-end, non-functional testing, security, API. What's also testing data is quite important because depends what do we want to obviously test again. The complexity of test data, in particular in financial institutions, in the insurance sector, where we have various, and aviation sector as well, by the way, because I've seen somebody from aviation sector that I worked with in the past. So there, when we have a dependency on time, and you need to, keep this data, test it, compare. This is very, very complex. So, how to get there? If we could go to, yes. So the proposal is to build a test automation stack, and it's relatively, let's say, cultural change. As there are some few years ago, that DevOps, when they started being very popular, it was very well, let's call it, advertised that this is a cultural change. So it's all about the innovation, all about the experimentation around the tools that we should, shall be allowed to be tested by the teams that are very close to that particular technology piece of the project. Why? Because they are very fast to be learned. They are very, relatively very easy to be implemented, and what's the most important thing is to fail fast. Yeah, it's not. We need to have very quick feedback from the tool to know if it works. If something works or not. We don't have to. We can't invest in the technology, which is very, very complex in investigation to find out why something is broken. Yeah. So, how to do it again? Close collaboration to DevOps. That's why we have this virtualization, containerization, and automation, because they are the main guys that own these tools in organizations. And this will be possible only if the organization will be ready for it. So again, it's hard, let's say this way, to maybe depends on the organization, but it may be relatively hard to convince that, hey, you know what, let's try something new. It will be faster, we can think cheaper, but we don't know what's there. It will produce different metrics. One of the aspects presented on a previous screen was metrics. I've covered that, mentioned this previously as well, but from high-level perspective, these people at the top that are responsible for, let's say, statement go, no go, so let's say delivery people, they love to have information, okay, single figure or two figures, let's say percentage of tests passed, number of bugs critical, and that's it for them, yeah? The reality, for instance, I really don't like the unit of a test case when it comes to the reporting. Why? because one test case can be relatively short, quick to be executed, another one will be end-to-end one, and this is completely different measure, yeah? Looking at the tools again, so they need to, the previous presentation actually was about it, that it was, that this, how was it, subjective reporting, that there were some areas of interest. It's quite similar thing to which we do present right now, that actually if we use special application to particular area, we can report it in a special way, which is independent from the other one. Yeah. But why am I saying this? From the organizational changes perspective, because it's about the mindset and the understanding that actually we can do it this way, not oh, I just need to have a figure, I don't know, 98% green and job done. No, it's not like this. While selecting these applications, obviously we need to look at return of investment, because at the end of the day, in innovation, this is a business case sort of, which needs to be measured, and benefits needs to be also assessed and measured if we get closer to them or not. And if we need to do any improvements in a process, any improvements in a tool, we don't see the benefits which were assumed initially, simply let's drop it and let's pick another one. Yeah, so Matt, could you please, yes. So this is what the let's say proposal is, that this is just a short list of...
This is just a subset, right? This is a shortened version, okay? Because you could put a bazillion tools into each one of those buckets, right? But Marcin, go ahead.
So obviously, depending on the technology, again, if you want to use Java, we use JUnit. If we want to use, I don't know, want to test API, there are different tools for it. What's quite interesting are the tools that are related to testing data. We do have plenty of challenges in our programs around it, just because of dependency on time. Because this is, I'm sorry, it's quite complex. So as you can see, I know that there are some names that we could say, that brands of the tools that could say that, hey, we can cover everything. Yes, we know you can in some situations, but we also know that it won't work, it should not work, it probably, definitely won't work in a longer term. Yeah.
All right, no, super. So listen, summing up, because there's probably a lot of information, and we've condensed this, and we generally run this session probably in a couple of hours to really kind of go through and explore all the things. So I think what we've seen and what we've seen now out there is, a single, that sort of approach for a single solution. Bash it, whether you're doing that or whether you're not. If you are doing that, still trying to get a single solution into, to try and address all of those different aspects within that portfolio, there's a lot of boxes to fill, right? And seriously, what we've seen, there aren't really any tools that would fit absolutely every single box in there. So what are you doing? The challenge is, the box you've just saw, I've just given you a candy shop of sweets and the danger is to go absolutely crazy and trying to use absolutely everything for that and every single thing. For us, it's making sure that you're selecting the right things to do, right tools to do the right jobs. And I think for us, making sure that if you don't have one or if you do have one, your automation strategy is probably one of your most important assets. Making sure that it's clear, it has its vision, it has its goals. I mean, it sounds like fairly simple stuff, but think about, and what some organizations don't think about is, yes, there's costs, there's the costs, the hard costs that you see, but then there's also the human being cost, the talent cost, the things that we've talked about earlier with the choices that you make. Are you thinking about all of the different consequences and impacts that could come along? You can't see them now, but they will come in the future. And typically those sort of things that we talked about with tech, budgeting and cost and people, it's ultimately a domino effect. Once one starts, everything starts to tumble around it, and making sure that you, as engineers or leaders, have that, clearly fairly into your mindset. Keep the framework open. Again, systems are open, tools are open, keep it open, right? Do not, try not to close the door or close the box to anything else, right? Making sure that you're working, selecting tools that are, fit for purpose and are actually fit for the tech that you're actually trying to automate and create automated assets against. And I think for me, just the final thing is, and it's kind of it's been around for forever and a day, right? Is making sure that, again, if you're doing and selecting the right sort of tests to and I'm sort of going to use a phrase, if you're selecting the right checks to automate, then you can actually, that your people and the human beings start actually testing, because checking and testing are two different things. Now that's a whole new workshop in itself, and there's plenty of people who would quite happily talk about that. But as leaders, as engineers, as just generally people within this community, I think just generally thinking about all of this and making sure that your strategy is in place, because as we said, and we've seen it, organizations fail the hard way, and failing the hard way generally comes at cost of human cost, layoffs, walkouts, and then also financial costs. And for us, that's something that we desperately want to avoid. So with that, I know I'm being looked at, and I'll turn it over to any questions, and we'll do our best to field anything.
Okay, sure. Thank you, guys. Warm applause, everyone. Maybe I will try to steal the moment of your time. One comment from my side. Actually, to comment, you have a one-stop shop, basically, closer to market, closer to business. So that's the thing that I actually took out from your presentation. And I wanted also to comment the pyramid approach that you have mentioned. So in typical pyramid approach, we would have a structure when we have, hey, you have that amount of unit tests and that amount of end-to-end tests, and sit down and shut up and do your work. And basically, and with your approach, it's actually more flexible. We have a couple of areas and we can actually address them. So yeah, that's our...
Yeah, I think just to answer that, I think it's a great observation, right? And I think that's one of the things that we wanted to do. I think the danger is there's so much information out there on the internet, and there's lots of good stuff, but there's also, there's almost a saturation of information. It's almost like information overload. Where do you go to get the best or most reliable information? And I think, listen to a lot of people, take things as they are. Again, nobody will implement anything. There's no silver bullets out there. If somebody has got a silver bullet, we'll quite happily buy it from you, because we've never seen one to this day. But keeping it open, always thinking, laterally versus closing your mind, has been one of the recipes. It's not the key to success, but it's one of the keys to success.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions from the audience?
I have a question that one of the key elements was implement organizational changes to support the transformation, and I'm wondering if you could give an example of such changes that would support that.
In the IT organization or specifically in QA and test?
Both.
Okay, so and again, so I think what we've seen, again, a lot of organizations have been going through an ongoing period of modernization. Even today at the stand, we had a gentleman asking about IT transformation, and because the IT function has to transform with the technology that it's, owning, it's responsible for. Many moons ago, there's a big debate around kind of, and there has been, or there still is a little bit, around sort of testing centers of excellence or testing excellence centers. Now, we've seen both, right? Testing centers of excellence generally has something at the core, and you spin off, hubs or or functions within tribes. That's been fantastic if organizations have been working with like that Spotify model. So you're giving the tribes However, what we have seen, and again, I'll sort of draw back to the example I've got with our client in the UK. Very suddenly, the head of QA and test lost all contact and kind of continuity across those 9 different tribes were doing whatever they wanted. And he came in, his challenge at that point, a couple of years ago, is like, well, how do I insist? My superiors are looking for continuity and consistency. These tribes are just releasing and doing things in a completely different way. Some were really good, some were just like releasing stuff and junk out into the IT infrastructure with absolutely no control whatsoever. He was getting beaten up because quality was his response. He was accountable for the end-to-end quality. So how do I do that? So he moved then to a testing excellence center, which again kind of creates, capability and continuity and giving autonomy to these independent tribes, but actually then had a hub, a smaller hub of capability. And I'm not going to say command and control, but he had a lot more assurance for that, because as organizations are transforming their IT, they are not transforming the organization. And I think that's back to where your question is. The IT organization has to transform. Now, you can throw in suppliers, outsourcing, and all of that good stuff, which is again probably a completely separate debate. But I think the bottom line, the long answer to a very short question, is the organization has to transform. And again, we've seen IT functions transform, and testing still sort of stuck in between business and IT, and nobody kind of quite wants to own it, and it gets bounced between the two. It has to be a fundamental part of the engineering capability, and that's why I kind of use the word quality, because typically also we've seen organizations don't have a QA and testing function per se. There's an engineering function, and there are different disciplines within the actual engineering function, and some of those people are more aligned to quality engineering than software engineering.
I will just ask a question in a bit different way, how to transform the organization to allow for this, yeah? You need to talk using the benefits with the guys that make the decisions. And you need to do the analysis of all stakeholders that you have in the organization, the testers, automation testers, the development side, let's call it this way, if they are separated, and management that will be, that will understand the language, like how much does it cost? Are the people happy? What is the retention factor? What do we have on the market? Can we invest some money, and what will we get from it? Yeah, just try to find benefits and measure them, and try to convince them into the benefits that you believe that will be materialized at some point. Sorry for
that. Was
does this
you asked a very short question and you got two separate
the thing
answers.
is,
bonus time, right?
If I may just, I've been in many projects, and believe me, that you can give up. Yeah, you can say, okay, I don't care, I want to fight for it, but it's not the point. The point is to really think how to change it and approach it in the right way. Because if you do not approach it in the right way, you will just burn out, and you won't do anything. There will be status quo, the same as usual. Yeah.
Marcin and Matthew, everyone.